I don't know. This game on a Saturday, I feel like I'm being rushed.
Me too.
Right? You know, I want that buffer day.
I do too.
Tomorrow.
I would love, with how the Sabres are going right now, I would love to go out somewhere or even go to the game. But as we're talking about, tickets are a little harder to come by. I'm sure you can find them on the secondary market if I really wanted to go. Or I could go sit in the press box with my kid who's been going to most of these home games this season. But I'd love to go to my bar. I was out the day the streak ended. It was a 3:00 game on a Saturday against Columbus. And the place I hang out on Hurdle got packed, not just because it was Saturday and it was around the holidays. Like, people packed into that bar for the face-off of the game. Like, it was like Brick Bar on a Wednesday night or something, whatever the big night at Brick Bar you said. It was packed. And I know the game, that was a thud. Didn't go so well. I would love to do that tomorrow. I mean, I could, but, with the Bills game looming, like, I don't want to go have a couple beers at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I'll be sleepy for the Bills game. But I would love it if the Bills were playing on Sunday because then tomorrow could just be a Sabre day, at least in the afternoon. And, yeah, now I just don't feel like that's really out there. For me, for fans, it is, but we got to work, after the Bills
Sabres game. Or no Sabres, I mean, they have nothing to do with my feelings about tomorrow. I just think I'd love to have that one day. I don't know. Does it really matter? Sunday's the routine. Saturday is not the routine. Maybe you go first and win, and you can revel in the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, there is that.
You go first and lose, and the rest of the weekend is kind of a bummer. You might not even want to look at it if it ends tomorrow. Well, we've talked about this for a minute this week, how last week too much of our time, maybe, a lot of it was spent on what if they lose. The possibility of all these years, as close as they've been, the high standard, in the end, a wild card loss to Jacksonville. I mean, especially, no offense, but like Jacksonville would have really stunk, and everybody would have been fired up for what they should do about it. All right, this is the end. It would have felt like time's up on some of this with the Bills. They have a so-so roster for a team that has gone this far and has done this well this year, I would say. So I think whenever it is they lose, maybe it's tomorrow, people are going to be sort of right there ready to go on how it is that Allen doesn't have better weapons and whatever about their defense. At least it wasn't last week, though. And this week has really not sounded like that. We haven't had hardly any, only when maybe prompted, or when I made this point a day or two ago, did anybody respond to it. Like, we haven't had the guys, the typical couched way anybody who calls in to talk about it puts it. I really don't want to bring this up, but is it time to consider maybe holding Sean McDermott accountable? And like, what does that mean? I mean, all of that's just what we're drowning in. If they'd lost on Sunday, and they easily could have. It's a good win. And then, I don't know, this week, I certainly don't want to build a conversation around the same premise, but it's not losing in the wild card, but it's also not losing or winning the Super Bowl. Like,
right.
We're still not at the point in the playoffs, and it's also a team that hasn't had any playoff success itself with Denver. It's still at a point where it won't really feel like progress, big picture, unless they win at least one more game.
Yeah.
At least.
I feel that, and I generally agree with it, but I do think it's different enough. Like, Denver, at least, is a traditional team, and they're not going to be dressed head to toe in teal. I feel like a loss last week would have been disastrous. I don't feel that way about this game. I feel it'll be really disappointing, and all of their flaws will be up for discussion and how they arrived at such a place in time with this quarterback and the goals that they have, and they constructed the roster the way they did. I think all of that will be pouring over that will be warranted, but the pressure is, to me, different enough from last week to this week to have it not feel anywhere near the same, even though it is still, it's a second-year quarterback as opposed to, a fifth-year quarterback. It's the first pick of the draft, in his draft year in 21 versus a guy that not a lot of people thought was even going to be a first-round pick at all when he got picked.
You can spin that however you want, Nix.
Yeah.
He was the 12th overall pick. He was the 6th quarterback taken.
Okay. So
think.
there is that, and I've said a couple of times, or at least I know I said it at least one time yesterday, like, you're not losing to Bo Nix. Like, that can't happen, and that's a little Jacksonville-y, right? I mean, it's the same kind of point, like we're the Bills. We've been a contender for 6 years. What are you doing here? You can't beat us. But they are the 1 seed, and they are at home, and they've had the rest. And I feel like those things objectively afford them an advantage that the Bills obviously didn't earn, and you can criticize them for that. I think that's fair and warranted that they had the regular season that they ended up having. But you got to deal with what's in front of you. What's in front of you, I think, even though I feel like Jacksonville was a harder team to get past, I just don't feel like a failure in this spot is going to leave the same amount of residue. I know there will people, maybe even us. I'm going to be disappointed, and that can turn to anger quickly. Sometimes you don't even recognize it happening. So I'm not saying it wouldn't be a bad job, but it's just less bad than last week would have been. Enough that I don't feel the same amount of anxiety about the game.
Well, it's just also, though, I mean, if you didn't say so, I think you think Jacksonville is a better team than Denver.
Right, I did mention that in here. I think that was the hardest, in my opinion. So that's shading how I feel about this game to some extent. Like, I'm more relaxed about this game because I don't think it's as hard a game, at least lining up to play, in a neutral setting. But the advantages Denver has are real and objectively, to me, could be a big part of the reason the Bills don't come through if they don't. And that sort of creates a little bit of a buffer for the anger, I think.
Over the years, sometimes you look at a game and is this a good win or a bad loss? I mean, I think it has to be a good win. Of course, it's the playoffs. You really don't even need that question in the playoffs because every playoff win is massive. I don't think it would be a bad loss. I'm not like I felt last week. And I don't know, maybe I was wrong because the Bills won by a score instead of lost by a score in the end, back and forth game. But I'm not really confident. Like, I think all the injuries and the travel and the short week versus a rested team, I mean, the history loves the 1 seeds in the divisional round because of that advantage they have. The Bills didn't have either a game like they've had in previous playoff seasons where it wasn't like they could just lay down and win in the wild card round, but they just won easily some of those times.
Yeah.
And that was not this. Or this was not that. I'm a little worried. Like, I think we're going to need Denver to not be that good. Whatever way you want to sort of frame that, whether that's Knicks or whether that's, I don't know, whatever they aren't on defense. Their defense is really good. Maybe they can be run on. Like, I think I'm going to need to be right, or for you to be right, or for anybody that thinks this to be right, that the Broncos really are not that good of a team for the Bills to take it, because it's just, unless it's another, and why couldn't it be another Josh Allen show, and he's just too good for the room, and nothing else really matters in the game. Not quite fair to the Bills last week. Trey White and
the defense
Thompson,
overall did a really good job.
They were getting run on and gave up their points, but they got enough done last week to help win that game. So I don't know. I'm just so eager to see it and anxious for it to find out if we're going to get if the ride continues.
Eager to see it, but not tomorrow.
I'd rather have it be Sunday. Yeah. Yes, I'd like a day off from it. Yeah. I liked last week.
Yeah,
where I got to watch two other games without having to stress.
You already did say it, though. It does cut both ways. Like, there's a scenario, like I made a point a few minutes ago working the Sabres into it, how I'd like to go out and hang out with some friends and watch a Sabres game in a bar tomorrow afternoon, but the Bills are playing right after the hockey game ends, and so I'm not going to do that. It is Saturday night. Like, we'll be on the air after the game until whatever, 9:30, 10 o'clock, depending on when the game ends. And that does afford you that opportunity to go out in revelry and whatever, and then you've got Sunday, well, and the game Saturday night, just even though it's not an AFC game, still just sort of sit with everything else after you're in the clubhouse and you're on to the next round already. That does feel pretty good. That's Baltimore in 20, right? The day play Saturday against the Ravens, or am I mistaken about that? I feel like I remember going on Sunday morning with like Sneaky Joe and Jeremy from my house just because we have the gear. Might as well, let's just do a show. Let's just go sit in the attic and have some coffee and talk about this game.
Yep. Tomorrow
does give you that for Sunday, so you can enjoy that if they win. If they don't, like you said, it's kind of like, do I even really want to watch the rest of this? I mean, I know I will, but it's not anywhere near the same. So at least, again, a win gives you the rest of the weekend, even though it's already Saturday night.
What do I need or not need here that isn't so obvious, Allen, or, any kind of point about turnovers, how that can always just decide a game? Last week makes it different toward decide, to say James Cook has to do X, because last week he didn't do X and they won anyway. They didn't need him to basically dictate the game on offense. So it's tougher to say that here. Of course, you'd like that. Mm-hmm. Any team getting, big production from its running game is in great shape to win. Of course, as long as the other team isn't doing the same thing. But that's a great edge for you if you can get that. You think about the receivers like we talk about every day, and whether Coleman can matter in this game or whether Cooks can, again, give them a big play or two. Kincaid, again, we're going to wait on that.
Yep.
But last week's game, like I said about Cook, doesn't force you into any of those kind of takes where, I can't see them winning if this guy doesn't produce. Because that's not the kind of team they are anyway. I mean, of course, Allen, you need to not have the bad plays. In their losses this year, you had turnovers from him, and he's probably going to get knocked around again tomorrow, I would think, because that has happened consistently this year. He's got to survive that with all his, maybe minor injuries. And Denver-wise, I think we've talked about this already this week. I mean, Nix is probably not the talent that even Lawrence is, but I think he's kind of a fighter.
Yeah, I do too.
And I don't think Lawrence is a fighter. And so at home, as the one in the playoffs last year, Denver should have, whether it matters or not, player to player, sort of a higher expectation this year than Jacksonville at this time, where this is not just we had a good season and Kansas City didn't and won the division and all the whatever, progress you want to call that for Denver. Now it's like we could really win. All these teams left are 2 wins away from the Super Bowl. It's right there. So I would think, well, what is this to say? I mean, the Denver would be right for this, ready for this, seriously ready for this. But do they have enough talent? They've got the coach. The quarterback's pretty good. Defensively, they have stars. Do they have enough overall to beat a Josh Allen team? We're going to find out tomorrow. They are favored by 1.5. That, just like last week, same numbers, is the opposite of how it was when the week started. The Bills were 1.5 favorites last week and then Monday, and both times it shifted the other way. In Denver, in this case, that happened Tuesday, and against Jacksonville, it was on Saturday when that move happened. We'll talk to Sam Panayotovich about the numbers and the matchup. As you may know from listening to him or him with us, he's heavily invested in the Bills winning it all. And, one step closer last week, like we all feel. We'll see how Sam is feeling about this game in